To the amendment, Senator Hurd.
Mr. President and Senators, I'm offering this amendment through the humble request of my elders, the Hmong Special Guerrilla Unit who fought in the Secret War in Laos. It may be the toughest legislation for me emotionally because it was my past and my heritage. When you saw mass casualty in front of you, it's hard to forget. I can't deny my heritage as a son of veterans who fought for the Secret War in Laos, supported by the United States of America. And we Americans didn't know the Secret War in Laos until the Hmong has arrived here in 1976. Every Hmong American person in our state have immediate family members recruited and trained by the CIA to fight on behalf of the United States. We have 5 House members who are Hmong American descent. Their parents, their grandparents are trained by the CIA to use guerrilla tactic to infiltrate the enemy of North Vietnam. America's rival during the Vietnam War were not the South, but were the North. My people, the Hmong people, were highland of northern Laos. As you can see on the map I have provided with President Kennedy, John F. Kennedy pointing to the map. The black area is where our homeland is. And we were the first to engage the enemy moving southward. Many American GIs and airmen were able to come home because of the courage and sacrifice of my forebear. I'm here also because of them, because of my forebear, the service of the Hmong Special Guerrilla Unit and the Air America. This amendment designates May 14th as the Hmong Special Guerrilla Unit Memorial Day in honor of those who served in the Secret War in Laos from 1961 to 1975 in support of the armed forces of the United States. May 14, 1975 has historical significance to the Hmong community, being the last day of airlift evacuation of officers and their families, and the day General Vang Pao, the leader who was supported by the CIA, left our homeland and his people make their escape to refugee camp in Thailand and later to America to start new life. And today I'm proud to be an American and I'm proud to be a Minnesotan. Senators, this amendment has been carefully reviewed by the Office of Veteran Affairs with their support and have no objection by the VFW and American Legion, as I heard. As you can see, the letter I present to you from Commissioner Herkey. And also a letter from the Air America Association. And the last statement here, written in the letter Air America, said, Hmong have fought a noble cause with us. Our country will remember our sacrifice if the Hmong veterans are not forgotten. So I'm very honored and very thankful that Air America has sent a support letter on our cause. So Mr. President, remember, despite the outcome of the Secret War, my elders and I and my people believe that the Hmong had fought on the right side of history. We have fought on the right side of history. My fellow senator, your vote green will justify the fact that my people indeed fought on the right side of history. And today will say it all. Let's write this American story together by passing this amendment. So thank you, my fellow senator, and thank you, Mr. President. I ask for a roll call.
A roll call has been requested. A roll call will be granted. Discussion on the amendment. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Senator Herr, thank you for that really moving summary. You mentioned a couple of things, and let me just reiterate what you said, Senator Herr, but maybe a little bit differently. I'm proud that you're an American. I'm proud that you're a Minnesotan, and I'm proud that you're my colleague. And I'm proud that your family and your people are here, and you're right. They did, in fact, fight on the right side of history. Would Senator Herr yield for a question?
Senator Herr will yield. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Herr, have you, I'm new to the Council on Asian Pacific Minnesotans. Have you reviewed this proposal with the Council on Asian Pacific Minnesotans?
Senator Herr.
Senator Pratt, thank you for your question. I have talked to the director of the Asian Pacific Council and some more board member, and they did express their support verbally, and they did say they will communicate with the majority leader and minority leader about their support. Although, being that this is a veteran-related issue, I have not, got the written statement, but it has spoken to me directly on that issue.
Senator Pratt.
Well, thank you, Mr. President and Senator Herr. Well, I did, in fact, reach out to the Council on Asian Pacific Minnesotans, and this really hasn't been discussed at the Council. And quite honestly, that's one of the reasons why we, in fact, have this Council, that they should be working with communities as a liaison to the legislature and the governor on affecting public policy on these very types of issues. Because I believe their concern, as they've expressed it to me, is that while we appreciate the sacrifice that the Hmong have made, that it might be viewed as unfair by some of the other groups that fought along in the secret war. And I can only attest to the pride. When I was at the unveiling of the Hmong Lao Memorial, I believe that was 2016, I met some of the veterans that you talked about, and they are very proud of their service, and they're very proud of this country, and I'm proud to have them here. But Senator Herr, I don't want to necessarily honor your community and maybe feel like I'm treating someone else unfairly. And so, Senator Herr, what I'd like to do is ask you to withdraw your amendment, and with my promise that we will put this on the agenda of the Council for Asian Pacific Minnesotans and take it up at our next meeting. And let's get that input back to the legislature so that we can do this collaboratively and with the full support.
Senator Herr.
Senator Pratt, Mr. President, I appreciate the offer, but this legislator has been in the queue for the last 3 years, and I have been waited this long, and we have passed so many other days to recognize veterans. We passed the atomic bomb veterans. We passed General Wesley Day. We passed the Fort Chaplain Day. We passed so many other days, as I even give a list here. Veteran Voice Month, and yeah, so many other. So we passed so many other days except this day, and it's never been considered to be giving a hearing. So I think we have ample time, and I just want to say this, that I value the legacy of my elders, my forebear, and if the door is not open today, this would be the last time that I will present this on the floor. Because I value them highly, I'd rather not be this like a kid asking for candy every single time for this. Because out of respect and honor, This is a matter of God and country, and a date we ask to honor them. They humbly come and ask us to honor them. I will open my door to recognize any other group of people that come and ask me to put legislation forth and recognize their service. I will be happy to be their champion for doing that. But for me to withdraw, I will not withdraw today, but perhaps this will be the last time that I will push this legislation forward. It's not that I'm surrendering, but because of the respect and the honor and the legacy, I want to hold my forebear in the highest. So thank you, Senator Press.
Further discussion on the A46 amendment, Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand today to support the amendment that has been brought forward by Senator Hur. And I stand with him because I, too, appreciate the sacrifice or the sacrifices of the Hmong community and the veterans and the elders. I also stand with him because often people make sacrifices like the Hmong veterans, and we're constantly told over and over again that today is not the day. Let's do it another day. And then we wait for that day to come, and then we're told again, don't do it today. Let's do it another day. Members, there's no better time than the present, because we live in this moment. And there are times in history that we have to stand up to the moment and not live in regret. Regret is the enemy of opportunity. And I'm committed to honor our Hmong community, its sacrifices in the war, the dangers that they faced, and the Hmongs fought a noble cause with us. Today is our opportunity to say thank you, and for it to be remembered. There's something about history, because even when our Maker calls us home one day, and we are no longer enjoying the sunshine and the great state of Minnesota, that we would hope our young people will know of the great sacrifices of the Hmong community and the elders, because they can look back on a day that has been set aside in order for us to pay appreciation and to applaud those who made it possible for us to stand here today. I too love history, and all of its good, bad, and ugly, because in that history, there was an opportunity created for me to have a better life, for me to stand on the shoulders of the many different people and the unnamed people, the faces that we can never say, that's such and such. But it is those unnamed people that we see sometime in old photos where we know that they were making a sacrifice for us. And to remember their sacrifice, I believe, is something that we should do so that they are not forgotten. And we should support this amendment. And the last thing that I'll say, because I'm one who believes that one should never stand too long in order to make a point, but to show where there is parallelism and also opportunity to also see someone else even in your own struggle is what we all should embrace. I took my sons on a trip to the South. We went to the Edmund Pettus Bridge because we went to various museums so that they have an opportunity to understand that they can go in the front door of a store or try on a pair of True Religion jeans in any store is because someone sacrificed for them. And the opportunity for them to walk across that bridge with an elder who could remember that day brought tears to the eyes of the elder, and my sons had to say, well, why are you crying? And he turned to them and said, it's because we're making this journey and we're walking across this bridge, not just because it's a nice day, but because we're paying homage and respect to all those who sacrificed. So, members, join me, along with Senator Hur, to pay homage and tribute to the unknown soldiers and people who died and those who lived, so that they can be honored not just today, not just tomorrow, but also in the future. Thank you so very much for listening.
Members, I have a lengthy list here. Next on the list is Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. President, I appreciate your recognizing me, and Senator Hur, I appreciate your passion for the issue that you brought forward regarding your people. And it's true that over 35,000 Hmong fought bravely alongside American troops. However, when we look at this amendment, it goes against what I think Governor Walz has said, one Minnesota. This is taking one group of people and making them stand out above the rest. And members, you've got on your desks a list of many people who fought alongside of our American veterans, servicemen during Vietnam. And you also have a letter that was sent from the, I think, the Coalition of Vietnam Veterans, and it has a list of people that have signed their names, or their names are listed. We couldn't get all the signatures on there, but I remember that these people here are, and if you look at line, or the first paragraph, it says, the United States Military Associations of Minnesota and private citizens listed below would like to express our support of the Hmong Veterans Day legislation introduced recently in the Minnesota State Legislature, provided all ethnic veterans received equal treatment by our state simultaneously. And that's my concern, is that we are putting one group, one tribe, one entity above another. You know, members, as we look at the American flag that's sitting up there by the president, and if you could spread that flag out and look at all the stars, is there one star that's brighter than the other? No. Each state is looked at individually as just as important as the other. And so we don't, as Americans who have come to this country, who've migrated here, who've ended up here, maybe because they weren't necessarily wanting to come here, but because of circumstances where they lived, they were looking for freedom. They were looking for liberty. They were looking for a new chance on life. And I think that as much as Senator Hur has passion for his people, I think we should have the same passion for others who fought alongside. And you look here, it says there were the Kampuchea Krom, there were many highland groups known as the Montenegards, the Republic of Korea, the Royal Lao Armed Forces, the Laos Special Guerilla Units, Australia, New Zealand, the SAA, the Royal Thailand Armed Forces, Republic of Vietnam, the Philippine Republic, and the Khmer Republic Armed Forces, all of whom lost members fighting for freedom against communist aggression during the Vietnam conflict, as did the Hmong and the secret war in Southeast Asia. Minnesota has welcomed many of the surviving veterans to our state, and we are appreciative, I should say, of the contributions they have made. And if you talk to other veterans who have fought in other wars, just recently, Afghanistan, Iraq, Kuwait, there are many of those countries who would like to or ethnicities who would like to themselves probably be recognized as being a part of their contributions to our great state, not only the state of Minnesota, but of the United States of America. And so I know that the Hmong deserve their recognition, as Senator Hur graciously has brought this amendment forward. And I believe that we should also, in turn, recognize others that have fought alongside them. And so I, Mr. President, would like to bring the A11 and amend his amendment. A111, I'm sorry.
Senator Anderson offers the A111 amendment to the amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment to the amendment.
Senator Anderson B. moves to amend her amendment to Senate File 2227 as follows. Page 1, line 3. This is Amendment A111.
To the amendment, Senator Anderson.
And I also would like to have a roll call.
Roll call has been requested. A roll call will be granted. Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I would like to point you back to the two articles that I put on your desk. There are days recognizing Vietnam War allies, the Kampuchea Krom, the Royal Lao Armed Forces and Special Guerrilla Units Vietnam veterans, the Cambodian Vietnam veterans, the Republic, the Thai Vietnam, the Australian New Zealand Armed Forces and Veterans Day, the Republic of Korea, the Canadian Vietnam veterans, the Philippine. I mean, we could make them all special days for each one of them with a special day to recognize them throughout our whole state on a special day. You name the day because they've already put a name and a date down there. I think that in the bill itself that we have before us, Senate File 227, in our bill we have the American Allies Day, and we wanted to recognize everyone that has fought alongside our military veterans and not to slight them in the least. So members, I would just like you to take an interest in this and consider accepting the amendment, because the amendment talks, as it's been very well detailed out, many different groups that came alongside our military during the time of our conflict during the Vietnam War. And so with members, I'd stand for questions, or if there's others that would like to comment, I'd appreciate it.
All right, members, we're on the A111 amendment to the amendment. I have a list of several names on the underlying amendment, but to the amendment, Senator Herr.
Senator Anderson, thank you for your amendment to my amendment. I would say, let me be very slow and carefully what I say. This amendment is good as a standalone by itself, but not to my amendment. So if it's not an amendment to my amendment and it's a standalone amendment, I will support it. I will support any recognition of Veterans Day for all people of any kind, any group in our state, Minnesota, and in our country. But if it's just to delete my amendment, I will not take that as a friendly amendment.
Further discussion on the amendment to the amendment, Senator Little.
Mr. President, I would just rise to a point of order, and I would say that the amendment to the amendment is not germane to the underlying amendment. I'll be citing section, I believe it's 402, paragraph 5, that says that an amendment to the amendment must be germane to the amendment as well as the underlying bill. So this is clearly a significantly, substantially different thing than what Senator Herr is trying to accomplish by specifically recognizing the contributions of the Hmong people in the secret war.
Advice? Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just trying to pull it up. But, Mr. President, what we're talking about is recognizing veterans who fought alongside of American troops in the secret war in Cambodia and Laos. And it seems to me that it is germane. As far as I can tell, the effectiveness of what effectively is the difference, as Senator Little pointed out, is whether or not we honor one group or all the groups that fought alongside our troops, and therefore I would say that the amendment is germane, and would ask you to rule Senator Little's motion not well taken.
Further advice, Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will Senator Pratt yield for a question?
Senator Pratt, will you yield for a question? Senator Pratt will yield. Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Pratt, what is the difference in the amount of honor that we will bestow on the people in the Anderson Amendment if it is separated, as Senator Herr requested? Would we not give the exact same amount of respect and honor to all these people that contributed to our
Senator Frentz,
military effort?
You're providing advice to the, we're on a point of order right now, so you can provide advice to the President, but we're not questioning the amendment at this time.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to provide some advice. This substantially changes what Senator Herr is trying to do. Senator Herr is here asking for honor and respect for these veterans. The amendment waters down, dilutes, and greatly expands what Senator Herr is trying to do. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further advice, Senator Little.
Thank you again, Mr. President. I just wanted to reiterate the rule, and I assume you've got it again, Section 402, Paragraph 5, that's on page 273 of Mason's, that an amendment to the amendment must be germane to the subject of the amendment as well as to the main question. Our own Senate rules then state that the amendment has to be substantially related to the underlying amendment. I would ask the President look to 2.1 of the amendment that Senator Anderson has provided, and it quite literally deletes the words Hmong history and replaces it with something else. The entire objective of Senator Herr's amendment is to honor the history and the contributions of the Hmong people in the secret war. So this literally changes the underlying the reason for the amendment. So thank you, Mr. President. This amendment to the amendment is not germane.
Further advice, Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise to support what has been said in terms of this amendment to the amendment not being germane to the underlying amendment. And I would use an analogy that we're probably all pretty familiar with here. We routinely and very somberly and appropriately memorialize fallen officers or veterans with highway designations and naming bridges. And if someone were to come in and offer an amendment to that to say, no, we don't want to name it after this particular individual and that individual's contribution and sacrifice. We want to name it after all the police officers or the law enforcement officers or the veterans in this particular community. It would substantially change the purpose of the original legislation that was being proposed. And so I think Senator Herr's point is exactly correct. There is nothing wrong with the amendment that Senator Anderson has offered, but it is not germane to the underlying amendment, and it should be considered separately. Thank you.
Further advice, Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. And again, there's no disrespect meant here, but to follow up, Mason's 402 number 2 says that to determine whether an amendment is germane, the question to be answered is whether the amendment is relevant, appropriate, and in a natural and logical sequence to the subject matter of the original proposal, which was to recognize veterans. And to Senator Little's earlier point, paragraph 3 says that the amendment may entirely change the effect or even be in conflict with the spirit of the original motion or measure and still be germane to the subject. And so, Mr. President, I suggest that the Anderson Amendment meets both of those criteria.
Further advice, Senator Little.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our Senate rules are quite clear about how things operate, which is we use the Senate rules. The Senate rules come first, and only in the absence of a rule in our own rules do we use Mason's. So the 2 paragraphs that Senator Pratt has quoted do not apply. whatsoever to our rules here, because we have Senate rules specifically speaking to germaneness, which is Rule 35, which states a non-germane amendment includes one that relates to a substantially different subject, or the other clause, which isn't relevant for the advice I'm giving here. But nonetheless, the two sections that Senator Pratt has quoted do not apply because there are specific Senate rules for that. This amendment to the amendment is a substantially different subject than what Senator Herr is trying to accomplish, so it is not germane. Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity.
Members, I rule that the point of order is not well taken, and the amendment is germane. We are on the A111 amendment to the amendment. Further discussion. Senator Hayden.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I find this to be an interesting discussion. We start this wonderful amendment out by Senator Herr, giving us a bit of a history lesson for those of us to understand what the Hmong people did for this country, and got a chance to meet some of them out here, and talked about how proud he was to be an American and how proud they were to be here, and wanted just a little bit of recognition in the form of a day or to say it. And then listen to Senator Champion eloquently interconnect that with the history of African Americans in this country and others, and all of us can kind of understand that. And then somehow we kind of feel like we got derailed, and Senator Pratt said that we must go to the Council of Asian Pacific Islanders. That's got multiple. It's not just a group. It's multiple ethnicities in that group, and they do their best to do this, Mr. President, to advise and counsel the legislature and the governor on the matters of the communities in which they represent. It didn't say that they have to rubber stamp it, approve it, say it's okay. It just said it advises us. Well, Senator Herr, on his honor, said that he has had a couple of conversations with some board members there, the director, and it didn't seem to be objectionable. But they also didn't go out and campaign hard amongst their folks and get an election certificate. Senator Herr has. Senator Herr represents his constituents. He represents his people, and he represents this community. So once again, we're asking Senator Herr to wait just a little bit longer. Now, he said it was 1970, 71 in which people left and had to come over and go to refugee camps and make their way here. So that was in 1970. It sounds familiar, Senator Champion, about some of the things that people are asking us to do around here is to wait just a little bit longer. Just wait and let us check in with a few people. And then Senator Anderson, who we have a tremendous amount of respect for and respect his service, is now saying, well, hey, everybody's created equal. Why not throw everybody into the fin? Anybody, Irish and anybody else who fought, right? Well, we don't have that time. Senator Herr has said these people. He's bringing it on behalf of these folks. It's well documented. This is their time and this opportunity. Senator Kent talked about, well, we don't do that for anything else. We don't say, well, everything is just equal, so we must throw it in. If that's the case, then every single holiday that we would have, it would just be holidays for all people. Right? We just came back from an Easter Passover break. Ramadan starts here really soon. We're not having a Ramadan break, right? And the reason for that is because we have not gotten to a point in which we said that everything is equal. We're not saying that every single holiday, every single folks are equal. We designate things that we believe are important. We designate issues that this body, when people get elected, have brought forward. And if we do that, if a member does want to bring that, I think that would be wonderful, and we'll have the debate. But that's not the point of it. Today, Senator Herr has said, listen, this is important. He's given you the understanding. He's given you the history. We shouldn't have to go to ethnic councils or anybody else to rubber stamp this issue. We should respect Senator Herr and the history of his folks and move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion on the amendment to the amendment. Senator Lane.
Thank you, Mr. President. I serve on the Council of Asian Pacific Minnesotans, and I have done so for about 7 years now, so I know some of the stories behind the stories, and I fully support Senator Her's bill here. There are, like, I think it was said that 35,000 Hmong were served in the secret war in Laos during the Vietnam War. They are asking to be recognized for their sacrifices in a war that nobody knows about. And they are here in Minnesota. No other state has as large a contingency of Hmong Americans as we do. I believe for the contingency that the CAPM represents, they're at about 25% of the Southeast Asian minorities in Minnesota. 25%. We are not talking about equality, we're talking about equity. It's very hard, as Senator Hayden just said, to find equality. We're talking about equity. What is deserved by each one? What is needed by each one? I notice on this handout from Senator Anderson that some of the 9 that I've represented here that he's asking for equality is Koreans, armed forces from Korea who fought in Vietnam, Canadians who fought in Vietnam, and Filipinos who fought in Vietnam. This is grossly different than the Hmong who fought in the secret war in Laos and then were left behind by us. And now a number of their families have come as refugees from Vietnam and from Laos and Thailand and the refugees camps over there. This is our Hmong American community. It is very large, it is very important to us, and it is time we honored them. Now these are people of integrity and character who say, we asked you once, we asked you twice, we asked you 3 times. We will not beg. We will not ask again, because that makes us beggars and we are too tall and too strong to be seen as beggars. We will not ask again. Please, do not vote for this amendment to the amendment, because it diffuses out a very important thing that we need to do, which is to honor our Hmong American community here in Minnesota.
Members, we're on the amendment to the amendment. Senator Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, colleagues, for the conversation. And thank you, Senator Herr, for presenting this. It was 1968, and my father was serving in the Senate. And my brother was graduating, and we got the news that my brother had been categorized by the draft board as 4F because of the fact that he had some metal in his leg. And so my brother graduated, and a year later, some of his classmates came back in body bags. Kent State occurred in the early 1970s, and it was in 1972 that I got my draft number. And I was 27, and I was notified by the draft board that I would be expected to report for a physical in May of when I graduated that year in 1973. So in 1972, I got my draft number. I knew that there were no college deferments. I wasn't excited about going over to Vietnam, and yet the only way to really avoid that was to perhaps enlist in a certain program. I chose to wait, and in January of 1973, I was at a basketball game when they stopped the game and announced that Kissinger had successfully negotiated a lasting peace treaty, and that 3 months later that was signed. It was about 5 years later that I began in my medical career to start seeing Hmong patients 2 blocks north of here, when I was doing my training at Bethesda Hospital. And I heard many stories of the terrible things that had happened, not just in the Vietnam War, but from January of 1973 to May of 1975, when our country started to withdraw, and it was a truly ugly time. Fast forwarding, the Hmong people became very important to me, and for 6 years my practice was in St. Paul from 1978 to 1984. Senator Herr, the difficulty that I have had with your amendment is that I don't want to slight a group that we're not going to mention. And yet I keep coming back to the fact that in an effort to not overlook someone, would that be enough of a reason to not support Senator Herr's amendment. So having said all that, I think Senator Herr's amendment allows for other groups to be recognized as they might need to be recognized. And so I will oppose this amendment so that we don't circumvent the intention that Senator Herr has put forth in his amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment to the amendment, Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the opportunity to speak again. Just to have you look at the letter that came from the group of individuals that put their names on here. I want to have you look at the date on there. It says April 17th. And April 17th, if I could take you back to Vietnam, and a lot of us were just teenagers, maybe none of us, maybe we're in our early 20s or mid-20s, 30s. Just to let you know that a lot of people, especially the Cambodians, April 17th was when the United States left them behind, and that became the slaughter of over 2 million Cambodians. And so those people didn't make it out. And a lot of the people on the list didn't make it out. And there's lots more that we could put down here with dates to, and as you see the dates that are designated here for these individual tribes or entities that would like to be recognized. So I hate to get into a heated battle, and I would like to withdraw the amendment to the amendment.
Senator Anderson withdraws the amendment to the amendment. Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe that we've now reverted to the A46 amendment. Is that correct?
That is correct. We're on the underlying A46 Herr amendment.
So, Mr. President and members, at the beginning of this session, Senator Herr asked me to chief author this bill, this legislation for him. And I agreed to do that. I've heard some of the stories that he's shared, some of the stories that people from his community have come and shared. And I am very grateful to hear what they have shared about this. And I'd like to offer a proposal to to divide the A46 amendment and see if we can capture something that can honor the heart and the intent of what Senator Herr is trying to do today. And so whether that's dividing it or making a motion to just remove part of the amendment, I'd like to keep everything up to line 1.18 and then eliminate the rest of the amendment. And just keep this method as my contention as I've come to veterans stories and veterans issues, and I don't serve on the Veterans Committee, but my intent has always been to allow veterans to share their story, and if a veteran has a story to share, allow them to tell their story. And certain stories have different impacts to certain groups of people or certain families than others do. But I think they're all valid and would be good to share. And so I relate this back to a couple years ago when I carried a bill for a constituent on atomic veterans. And all of you helped pass an Atomic Veterans Day, is passed off this floor unanimously, that would just name a day and give a description of why this day is important to a group of people, and then it leaves it at that. And the rest of the amendment in this A46 amendment goes on to what schools would respond to, what other local units of government or businesses may respond to. But I think if we just limit the amendment up to line 1.18, we'll keep it in line with what I've worked for and what this body has done in the past of naming a day and giving a description of why that day is important to a group of people. So, Mr. President, if you could advise if my motion would be to divide the amendment or if my motion would be better to delete lines 1.19 through the end of the amendment.
Senator Matthews, I think it would be most appropriate to delete section lines 1.19 through 1.27. So you would offer an oral amendment to the A46 amendment to delete lines 1.19 through 1.27.
Mr. President, thank you. Yes, that is my motion.
Okay, so Senator Matthews has an oral amendment to the A46 amendment to delete lines 1.19 through 1.27. To the oral amendment to the amendment, Senator Herr.
Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Matthew, for helping out. I will accept your oral amendment as a friendly amendment.
Any discussion on the oral amendment to the amendment? Senator Senjum.
Mr. President, just looking at it, wouldn't you also delete everything after states in 1.8? Otherwise, you've got a sentence there with no period at the end of line 8.
Senator Senjum, it's 1.18.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So members, just
you.
so everyone's clear, one more time what we're voting on, the Matthews oral amendment to the A46 amendment would be to delete lines 1.19 through 1.27. Any more discussion on the oral amendment to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. No. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. So members, we are back on the A46 amendment as amended. Is there any further discussion? Senator Herr.
Mr. President, I'd like to withdraw the roll call.
Senator Herr withdraws his roll call. I had several members on the list. I'm just going to go right down my list to see if they still want to speak. Next on my list was Senator Frentz. He's not in the chamber. Senator Eaton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will be brief. I just wanted to stand in support of Senator Herr and to say my generation in the 60s and 70s, I had friends and relatives come back from Vietnam, and some were involved in this secret war, which our own president was saying wasn't happening. And I heard many stories about their lives being saved and their experience in Vietnam and Laos being much better because of the friendship and support of the Hmong people. I can't tell you how much of an impact the Hmong have had on my life, in that we spent in Mankato a lot of time fundraising for the refugee camps in Laos and Cambodia, and got to know individuals as they were sponsored to come over to the United States. So I strongly support this. I don't think by having a special day for the Hmong in any way takes anything away from anybody else who contributed and helped the United States forces. I don't understand that perspective, why anyone would feel threatened by that. I honor all of them, but I think that it is very fitting and appropriate that we especially call out the support that we received from the Hmong.
Members, several members have indicated to me that they wanted to be removed from the list. Next on the list is Senator Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Herr, for bringing this forward and for working to achieve where we're at. I'm one of the people who are here today because of the Montagnards, the Hmong, the Royal Laotians, and many others who served. I can safely say that my life was probably saved by one of them. I served in Vietnam in a fire base about 2 miles south of the DMZ. this is a very emotional moment for me. And is much more so because I understand the emotion that Senator Herr and the people, his ancestors, his people feel. I think that what we have done here is an appropriate approach to recognizing a people who had no country. The people that served in the armed forces of many of the countries that helped us served as a part of their country, and I'm not saying anything other than that they served, they were in harm's way. The Hmong did not have a country. So I do not feel that it is incorrect to honor them with a separate honorarium. And ask everyone, it would be wonderful to see a unanimous vote on this particular provision, because I think it sends a message that the sacrifices were not lost, nor were they forgotten. I will never forget them. Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment, Senator Swedzinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. On our currency, it says e pluribus unum. It's our nation's motto, e pluribus unum. And I often reflect on what those words mean, because they mean different things to me at different times. But today, what it means to me is Senator Herr's bill isn't about standing above the American people, it's standing alongside the American people. Thank you, Senator Herr, for this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion on the amendment, Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Herr asked me to speak in regards to my experiences with General Powell and also many of the Hmong as well. And I had the privilege to be with General Powell and with an interpreter as he told the story. And it was a great privilege that I had to hear from General Powell, to meet with him, talk with him, and all the clan leaders as well. And you find that when you're with those who have fought alongside our U.S. soldiers for freedom, there's a special bond, especially since my husband served in Vietnam and took care as a nurse in the emergency room at a MASH hospital, direct battlefield casualties. And then later on, in the last 6 months, he took care of injured civilians, also frequently direct battlefield casualties or illness. The Americans took care of everybody, irregardless of their color. That was their passion, that was their commitment. But we associated there with Cambodian, Laotian, a whole variety of people that were along together, and each of them respected each other and the contributions that they made and that they gave. And the Hmong people were one of those. And our great admiration and great respect for them in regards to what they did. But I think it is really important, as we've heard today, and I appreciate the discussion, because it did bring to mind that long, long list of those who worked together with America in our fighting for freedom against communism, and the persecution and the dire straits that they were in due to communism. It is really important to recognize what they were suffering and what they were going through. And those of us here right in Minnesota, we left safety and comfort to go over to another country and help them. It was not a very good feeling. This was not a classical war like you think of World War II, but it was a very difficult one. And my heart grieved as we know how many of them, as we wound down in our association in the U.S. in Vietnam, and the circumstances in that country and what they had to do. But the United States also did something that was really important. Those that came here received immediate citizenship to protect them, to take care of them, and to honor them. And also today, on the Capitol, none of these other groups that are, many of them here in Minnesota today, have a memorial on the grounds of the Minnesota State Capitol as the Hmong do. And so it's really important for us that whenever we have this conversation, we must remember all who served together, all who helped the Hmong, who helped them, who served alongside them, and they were very, very valuable to each other. So, Senator Herr, I honor you and the Hmong and your contribution to our country, and also recognizing the contribution our country did try very hard to do for freedom fighters all across the world, but especially in the Vietnam War. And members, with that, I will, as we go forward to a vote, this is a time and this very unique situation that I think each member should vote their conscience. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion on the A46 amendment as amended. Senator Marty.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank Senator Herr for bringing this. Our family and our church helped settle some Hmong families 40 years ago. We still have ties with, and two little girls we consider grandchildren are Hmong children. And I want to second what Senator Ralph said, that the Hmong population was a much different one than many of the others who helped. They were not fighting as part of their nation's military. They were fighting because they cared and they thought that was the right thing to be doing. And they have no country in the sense that most of the population of Laos was not supportive of them, and most of them had no choice but to flee, being shot at as they did. And I think many of us know Hmong families who were shot at as they were fleeing. But I wanted to also thank Senator Anderson for his generosity in withdrawing the amendment. I think there are many other groups, which he points out wisely, deserve our respect, deserve our honoring. But stepping aside to let this one through today, I think it's very appropriate for the Hmong population. So I wanted to thank Senator Anderson as well as Senator Herr for his good work on this legislation.
Members, I'm going to give Senator Herr the final comments on the amendment as amended. Any further discussion before we go to Senator Herr? Senator Herr.
And thank you, all members of our body here, senators, and first I want to thank you, Senator Anderson, for having an engaging discussion. And you're a good man, good person, God-fearing person. So I thank you. I'm so happy to serve in this body with you. I also want to thank Senator Ralph for his story, and it means a lot. I'm in tears as well. I also want to thank Senator Kiffmeyer for her kind words. And this is my country now. This is our country now. It won't make sense if I said this is not my country, where I'm sitting in the center of Minnesota, in the state Minnesota capital. So this is my country now, and my children will die to defend this country as my forebear had died to defend this country as well. So thank you, Senator Kiffmeyer, for also bringing up mentioning General Vang Pao. And this is General Vang Pao's wish. He left a word before he died that May 14th, let May 14th be a day to remember his people. So, Senator Kiffmeyer, thank you. Thank you for I'm just happy to be in the Minnesota, the land of blue sky water. Thank you very much.
Members, we are on the A46 amendment as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. No. Motion prevails and the amendment is adopted.